All right, let's talk about heart failure real quick. And we're just going to do a real quick intro to the two types we'll see. And to remember this, let's remember this phrase: 3 doctors and 4 PhDs. So this is to remember the strong high yield associations with each type of heart failure. And you can see that there's, let's just look at these 3 letters of each, right? So 3 D R S, 4 P H D. And then let's write it out, what we have for each. So this means we're going to have an S3. It means we're going to have dilated cardiomyopathy, reduced ejection fraction, and systolic heart failure. Give yourself a little room here. And then what do we have for PhDs? That means we're going to have an S4. We're going to have a preserved ejection fraction. We're going to have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and we're going to have diastolic heart failure. So this means we have a super strong, rigid heart with 2 really strong chambers. So we can see that it's very thick and wide septum. So there's very little room for fluids. Decreased left ventricular and diastolic volume. Versus over here, we're going to have a super wide dilated heart stretched in every direction, and we have more room inside, so we have increased left ventricular and diastolic volume. And so you can see all those sounds we're going to hear on auscultation is an S3. We have dilated cardiomyopathy, as you can see here. This is very dilated. Remember that the S3 means there's a lot of water splashing in. So when you squeeze the atria into the right ventricle, it's going to splash in here because there's so much water in here. And it's going to splash and make a sound as the water collides, versus in the diastolic heart failure, where it's going to go in and hit the hard wall and oops, draw a drop of blood coming in here, and he's sad because he's hitting a hard wall. Ouch. So we can consider this to be like a door, right? You knock on the hard door. Let's get a nice, beautiful door here. Here's our door handle. Here we have some windows. Oh, gotta move my handle over. And there's our door, right? So you're gonna knock on the door. It's gonna be a loud S4. Door rhymes with S4. Versus over here, we have S for systolic heart failure. This is gonna be splash. And it's gonna be early because there's all this water here. This is just a memory aid. Don't go too much detail about it. Note this sound is going to come earlier because look, there's less distance for that water to travel from the atria to the ventricle. Ventricle. Whereas over here, if we look at it like this, if we look at our heart, and we're going from atria to ventricle. It's going to be later because we have to go all the way through, all the way here to a splash into that thick ventricle. Knock, knock. Don't confuse it with a pericardial knock. This is just trying to remember you. It's knocking on the door. It's a hard knock of S4 hitting a hard ventricle. Stiff, strong, hypertrophic. Right? These are added in parallel rather than in series. Right? And you can also remember that here, parallel. Whereas this one is S for series. All right. I actually meant for this to be in this ventricle, so just imagine it's over here. So there you have it. So we have, just imagine this is over here. Splash. All right, use your imagination there. So we have heart failure. So let's look at it. We have 3 doctors and 4 PhDs. That's like the average ratio that students get ripped off in a med school, right? So that's your ratio. That means you're going to be spending a lot more time hearing these guys talk about their boring research. That's all theoretical. And then you'll be like waiting in line to do your rotations and things like that because there's only so many physicians they could invest their money in hiring. And they're trying to recruit as many volunteers as they can to save money and hire PhDs instead of hiring doctors to teach. Yeah. So that's it. So we have 3 doctors, 4 PhDs. So you can see S3, dilated cardiomyopathy, reduced ejection fraction, systolic heart failure, splash, and then cells added in series. Whereas we have 4 PhDs to remember S4, preserved ejection fraction, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and diastolic heart failure. Because it's a filling error. Cannot fill a hard ventricle. Cannot fill the stiff hard ventricles, right? Hard to fill. And this one's weak and floppy equals hard to pump. Right? And then this one is one more last thing we can remember is that for this one, it's good. We have a goal-directed medical therapy, whereas this one's just kind of supportive, lifestyle meds, diuretics, etc. Whereas this one we have GDMT, which is going to be remembered by banish, as in banish death, so they can live a couple more years until they decompensate. We have beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, neprilysin inhibitors, such as, let's give ourselves one more little line here, such as Entresto, which equals sacubitril, which is the neprilysin inhibitor, plus valsartan, which is an ARB, angiotensin receptor blocker. And then we have ivabradine. Then we have S and H, S and H. I always forget these two. Where are they? This is going to be spironolactone, which is a mineralocorticoid receptor blocker, aka potassium sparing diuretic, of which we also have a eplerenone. And then finally we have hydralazine. And these are all the life-saving, goal-directed medical therapy for reduced ejection fraction. And that's it. And then you could also step it up to like pacemaker or implantable cardioverter defibrillator. And then later you can talk about decompensation, at which point you could think of getting a pump to do the work for you. What's the name of that pump? I forgot it. You could have a pump, and then another option would be transplant. Bada bing, bada boom. There it is, heart failure.